Hi folks, welcome to Greg's Workshop. I'm Greg and today we're going to be installing a 240 volt circuit to power this Cadet heater. For today's project we're going to use this 20 amp double pole breaker, 20 amp 240 volt outlet, 20 amp double pole switch, some metallic boxes and covers, and this wire. This is type TW wire. It's got 2 hots and a ground. There's no neutral. Size is 12 gauge. That's the proper size for a 20 amp circuit. Type TW is actually, this is made for well pumps. It's submersible, but it's okay to use in conduit. It's kind of nice for this. We're going to be running through some existing conduit and then adding some more. These 3 wires are kind of twisted together, so it should feed a little bit easier. As with any electrical project, the first step is to turn the power off. We're going to turn off the 2 circuits that we're going to be working on, the air compressor circuit and the wall plugs on this side of the room. We're going to be running the wire through this existing conduit and down out through here. We're going to have to pull this cover off of the box and cover off of the next box where we're going to add some more conduit. To put the conduit in the box, first we remove the knockout. This was a 3/4 inch knockout. In order to fit the 1/2 inch conduit in, we have to use these washers. One goes on the outside, one goes on the inside. They reduce it down to 1/2 inch. Put the nut on, and then we can tighten it with a wrench. For box offsets, there's an actual way to do it using math and angles and things. I tend to just wing it. It works well enough for me, but your methods may vary. Last, we put the 90 in the conduit before we hang it up on the wall. Now that we have the conduit bent with box offsets on the ends, we can go ahead and hang it up on the wall. First off, we need to tighten the set screw so it stays in place. The code requirement is to put a clamp within 3 feet of every box and with 10 feet in the field. This whole thing is about 3 feet long, so we're just going to go ahead and use a single clamp. Next, we'll put this box up here and secure it to the wall. The actual outlet will be up near the ceiling. We're going to cut a 2-foot piece of conduit, bend some ends in it, and hang the final box. When using this metallic conduit, also known as EMT, it's important to use a tool to remove the burrs from the inside and outside of the cut ends. An important part of working with metallic conduit is to make sure that your boxes are properly grounded. They sell these grounding pigtails, little screws, and the boxes have little threaded bits where you just... Let's talk about wire for a minute. For this project we're going to be using 12 gauge solid copper wire. There's 2 different kinds of copper wire, solid and stranded. Stranded is more soft, more flexible, it's really good for pulling through conduit. Solid is stronger and more stiff. It's good for pushing through conduit, which is what we're going to be doing. I put some electrical tape on the end of these 3 wires to keep them together and applied some wire pulling gel to lubricate it as it goes through the conduit. We got the wire pushed through to this junction box. Now we can pull it out and feed it through the next conduit. We have all our wire run. Now we're going to start wiring the outlet and the switch. We're going to start with the point furthest out in the circuit and work our way back towards the panel. This is a NEMA 6-20R receptacle. It's 240 volt, 3 wire. That means 2 hots and a ground. On the back, both of the gold colored screws are hot, while the green colored screw is ground. We need to bond that ground to the ground wire and to the pigtail that we installed in the middle. I'm going to be installing this plug into this 4-inch square cover. In order to do that, I need to start by breaking these tabs off so that it'll fit. Next, we screw the outlet into the cover. The screws are already provided and in place in the outlet. We just need to get it lined up and drive it home. I couldn't get a good angle to show you the actual process of wiring up the outlet, but here's the final result. We have red and black on each side. Those are our two hot leads. We have our green lead, our ground wire, right here, run up to a connector, which is also wired into the box pigtail and the ground coming from the panel. This is a Leviton 20 amp, 120 or 240 volt outlet. It's a double pole switch, which means that it switches two sides. So what this will do will turn power on or off to both hot leads on the 240 volt circuit. And here's our completed switch. You can see we have our red and black line wires coming into the bottom of the switch and our red and black load wires going out the top of the switch. Additionally, we have our grounds connected. We have the pigtail from the switch, the pigtail from the box, and the grounds from the incoming line side and the outgoing load side. It's good practice to wrap any switch or outlet with electrical tape just to provide an extra layer of insulation over these terminals. Now that we have both the outlet and the switch in place, we can go ahead and connect our wires to the panel. We're going to connect this black and red, our two hot leads, to these two screws on this 20 amp breaker. Our ground I've already connected over here to the ground bus. It's important to note that this is a sub panel, and on sub panels the ground and the neutral need to be separate. With the wires connected to the breaker, we can turn it on and test to make sure that we're getting power out. $240 volts. With the leads connected to the outlet, we can turn on the switch and check our voltage. 240. Now that we have the wiring done, we can get to mounting the heater. The manufacturer provides for two mounting options, either the wall or the ceiling. I prefer the ceiling just for clearance purposes. We don't have an actual ceiling here, so I cut this piece of scrap 1 1/8" underlayment plywood, drilled some pocket holes, and we're going to use that to secure it to these two cross ties. Next, we're going to get the bracket mounted. This was a used unit, so it's a little bit dirty, but it'll work just fine. The bracket has these nice little keyhole slots. I put 3 screws up in the ceiling. We'll just slide it on, drive in a 5th or 4th screw right back here to keep it from sliding off. The last step is to hang the heater. Alright, we'll see how it runs. It's already starting to put out heat. So let's discuss a few things about this project before we wrap up. First off, I'm not an electrician. I'm not a professional. I am a homeowner. However, I did wire this entire shop myself. I put in the sub panel myself. I did all the outlets and it passed the code inspection just fine. Secondly, if you are going to do this project, make sure that you have competent help if you don't know what you're doing. I have a brother-in-law that's an electrician. He helps me out quite a bit. Secondly, if you're going to do this project, know what wire size you need. In general, 15 amp will take 14 gauge, 20 amp will take 12 gauge, and 30 amp will take 10 gauge. This heater is a 4,000 watt heater, which means it draws just less than 20 amps. So I was good to go with a 20 amp breaker and 12 gauge wire. Let's talk about grounding. It's important to ground all of your electrical services and outlets. On this project, we grounded the new electrical boxes. We did not ground the old boxes because they're already grounded from the existing circuits. We also got quite a bit of wire in that first section of 1/2" conduit. There were a total of 8 12 gauge conductors. That seems like a lot, and it is, However, it's only about a 32% conduit fill if I remember correctly. Code allows for up to 40%. And why did I run a new ground wire? Because they're all 20 amp circuits, I could have used the same ground wire up to that first box where we split off to the new conduit. I went ahead and put in a new one just because I didn't want to mess with it. I didn't want to cut the existing wire and get into it. It's just easier that way for me. Alright folks, if you enjoyed that video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notified of new videos every Saturday, leave a comment. I promise I'll respond. Thanks for coming to Greg's Workshop, and I'll see you next week.